You're now warping in to Find Time.
Hello, party people. Hello, mana people. It's your boy Dre, and I am here with Then of Mana.
The wisp of mana is floating right in.
Ooh, delightful. Would you like to have a cup of tea, wisp of mana?
I would love to have some tea of mana from the sanctuary of mana.
Some tea of mana. That's one of my favorite penny arcades is when they're making fun of Prince of Persia Sands of Time. They kept calling everything of time. Oh, you have to get the key of time to open the door of time to do the etc. Yeah,
that's good. That's great. That's amazing. I mean, look, there's so many like nouns of mana at this point. So I mean, look, it's just as well.
There's what is it literally called? Book of Mana or Art of Mana?
Yeah, it's the art book's the Art of Mana. Yeah.
Art of Mana. Yeah, it's like fucking wow. Anyway, yeah, we're here to talk about the brand new game, Visions of Mana, and yeah, we're just going to dive right into this. So I want to say this first, though. This episode is going to feature something we haven't really done before on Find Time, because typically we say up at the top, hey, spoilers, go away if you don't want to hear them. Here's what we're going to do this time, and I stole this from my friend Dave from Tales from the Backlog. We're going to have a spoiler wall. So after a certain point in this episode, we're going to say, hey, that's the end of the general discussion / review of Visions of Mana. If you want to continue on with us, here is spoiler stuff. So don't worry, we're going to give you plenty of warning when we get there. But if you just want a general overview and just to hear us talk about the game in general terms and not get too far into the weeds as far as story and other stuff like that goes, you can definitely listen to this podcast and get that. So this is one time where I'm not like, fuck everything and just spoiler city. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to put them behind a wall. So you're welcome. And thank you, Dave, for letting me steal this, even though I didn't ask him.
I'm sure it's not patented.
I'm sure it's not. Hey, I'm sure he stole it from someone else. Isn't that right, Dave? As if he's listening to this. You know, before we get into the game proper, though, let's just set a little bit of a stage here, because earlier this year we did Trials of Mana versus Trials of Mana. We talked about the SNES original and the 2020 remake, and we like both versions for different reasons. And at the end of that episode, we talked a little bit about Visions of Mana, and I said, I think if this game is simply not embarrassing, it'll have done its job. What do you think about that? Is this game just not embarrassing? Did the game do its job?
It does its job. Whether it transcends that, I'm a little more skeptical. But yeah, it's not an embarrassing product. I mean, I played all these building up to this game because I'm a maniac. And let me tell you, half of these games are pretty embarrassing.
I mean, Dawn of Mana. I mean, I know you gave each one a letter grade. You gave Dawn of Mana an F, right? Because it deserves one. Yeah,
I did.
I mean, I'm surprised you beat the game. I'm really surprised. I know you can put up with bullshit that I won't, and vice versa, I guess. But like, man, I don't think I could ever bring myself to beat a game like Dawn of Mana, and you fucking did.
It was hard. It was really hard. It was much suffering.
I know you wanted to give up, but
I did. Like
what? Okay, but what made you push through? I gotta know. Like what actually made you? Did you look it up? It's like, oh, I'm not that far from the end, or just like I'll just try it again, or like what made you actually beat it?
It's the lore, man. Like, it's so crazy in terms of how it portrays, like, some mana, like, tropes. And incidentally, Visions of Mana also portrays these tropes in an interesting way. So I just had to see that. Whether it was worth that, I don't really know. But I had to see how it all kind of went down.
Well, I asked you, I figured that might be the case, and that's why I asked you, because I wanted the audience to understand this guy played through an entire game that he gave an F for lore. That's how dedicated he is to mana, the lore of mana. So I just want people to understand what we're talking about here. Me, I think everyone knows already. I'm just more of a, I don't want to say casual. I like mana games, but most of them are bad. So I don't play most of them. When they're good, I play them. So yeah, this one, I just think we should say as a baseline was good. On Blue Sky, I give a letter grade to every game that I beat recently, and I gave it a B-. I think it deserves a B-.
I also gave it a B-, though I was tempted to give a B, but I think it deserves a B-.
It would have a B if it had better music, which it doesn't, but we'll get to that later. I think we can now set the story and like the premise of the game for people who haven't played it. And again, we're not going to spoil until later in the podcast. So let's just set the basic stage. Okay. So you begin the game not as our hero Val, but as a man named Oren. And Oren and his girlfriend Liza are trying to escape this town that they're in and also escape Liza's fate. And Liza's fate is that every 4 years, a group of 8 people known as the Alms make a pilgrimage, if you will, to the Mana Tree to sacrifice themselves to the Mana Tree to keep the balance of the world in order. For instance, if the Alm of Earth doesn't go to the tree, there might be some natural disasters like earthquakes or volcanoes or shit like that, right? Something bad might happen with the elements if you don't do this. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Liza does not want to be a sacrifice to the Mana Tree because she's in love with Oren. They want to be together, right? So they're trying to just escape. But that doesn't really happen because she turns into a pillar of stone, a living stone statue, before they can make their leave, and then Oren escapes some other means, and then that's the beginning of the game. Then the real game begins with we meet our hero Val, his best friend Hina, in this town. She becomes an Alm. He's a soul guard. Val is a soul guard, which a soul guard is someone who protects the Alms as they make their pilgrimage, and the story begins from there. That's the basis of Visions of Mana. I gotta say a couple things. This is the best setup for a Mana game ever. I know we're talking about a very low bar here because most Mana games are just like, whatever, Mana Tree, Mana Sword, do this, do that, the game's over. And that's fine. That's not even a complaint. That's just how Mana games are. For this game to give us like some real backbone, it's like, Mana Tree, sacrifices, etc. That's interesting for once.
There's a lot more gravitas, right? Because the stakes aren't quite as readily apparent in most other Mana games. The closest really ultimately is Trials of Mana, in which like someone's kingdom can get ransacked and then they have to be on the run, right? So I mean, like the fact that like Oren's on the run for like deeply personal reasons, like it's pretty interesting, right? And those reasons we discovered throughout the course of the story. And this is a real trip, honestly. I really like this setup.
Yeah, it introduces, because it's there in that intro where he's like, we shouldn't have to sacrifice ourselves to this tree and, blah, 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 or the stuff Oren is saying. It's like, usually you wait till later in the game to get that sort of descent, right? But you're getting it right up front. And I think that's pretty good. The other great thing about this game from the outset for me was that the intro, goddamn, just like literally the thing you see before the title screen comes on. And yes, they say Visions of Mana. One of the characters says that, just like Trials of Mana 2020. This intro, man, look, you love the Mana art. That is your favorite shit of all time, especially like the Mana Tree. Everyone knows the cover of Secret of Mana with the flamingos and the tree and everything, right? I think that's on the title screen as well. You get to actually like see that in living, breathing, quote unquote, real graphics now. It's I guess what I'm trying to say is it's very interesting to have a Mana game where the Mana Tree is actually a thing, not this old prophecy or this old withered away thing that you have to revive maybe or whatever. Like, it's a real living, breathing thing. I think that's like really cool.
A living, breathing thing that has skill, because most of the time, at best, you're going to see like the trunk or whatever. Like, you're really not going to see much of it in the games themselves. Most of the sort of presence of the tree as a whole is really in the concept art for, say, like Secret of Mana or Trials of Mana, right? So, I mean, like, Trials gets close to this sort of spectacle, but it doesn't quite get there. This really has that spectacle on full display, and that's just, like, mind-blowing, man.
So I guess that's like your perfect inroad to talk about like just eating with our eyes first, right? Graphics, art, presentation. Where do you want to start with that? Because this game is beautiful. So you start somewhere and I'll piggyback off you.
There is such a high level of fidelity, and like in sort of like middle budget games, I often crack the joke that things look good so long as you don't aim the camera at any individual asset for so long. That's my favorite joke, right? But I was actually aiming the camera at like everything in this game, and like every corner looks so like fleshed out and so beautiful, right? And like
Yeah.
it really does. Like the towns are so alive and stuff like that, right? So like it's like there's so much detail and just so much to like look at. The foliage really like makes everything feel filled out, and it's so impressive, really.
I think a good comparison point, and we're going to keep coming back to this throughout the course of this episode, is Trials of Mana 2020.
Yeah.
Because that was the first real quote-unquote Mana game in 3D. Yeah, it's a remake, and they're basing off of something else, but that was the first time it's like, okay, we're going to do this with like current gen power at the time, right? So we're going to keep coming back to that. And yeah, this is a PS4 game as well, but like obviously we played the PS5 version, and this is such a dramatic step up from Trials of Mana from 4 years ago that it's not even funny. It makes that game look like child's play with the graphics. Not that game was like bad looking to begin with, but it was definitely kind of plain, and it was okay that it was because it's a Super Nintendo remake, right? This is on a completely other level.
A Super Nintendo remake for a series that had yet to get back on its footing, right? Because honestly, who really respects or remembers Adventures of Mana or Secret of Mana 2018? Like, not a whole lot of people do, right? It's so
there's nothing to remember. It's the most one-to-one ass mostly remake like ever. It's just okay.
Yeah, that's Secret, man. And but the lighting though, like that was such a element that was quite impressive the entire run. It's not really present in Trials 2020. So just the fact that everything was like literally lit, that in itself was quite impressive. Like truly.
I definitely agree. The lighting is way stepped up. Trials of Mana is pretty flat in that regard. So I mean, again, that's fine. It's just what it is. The character models though, again, with Trials of Mana 4 years ago, that was the thing that really impressed me and made me have hope that that game was going to be good, because they nailed the character models, and that's very, very hard to do. Even in this day and age, bringing something 2D to 3D is still like not an automatic win, right? We never know how that's going to go. Trials of Mana did that so perfectly, even the wackier stuff like Charlotte, which shouldn't have never worked in 3D, and it did.
Oh, no way.
It was in all 6 characters were impeccable. And now that we have this new game, Visions of Mana, with new characters, it's even more impeccable. Whoever worked on those must have worked on these, and the same character artist or whatever, because you can tell the characters in Visions of Mana are similarly beautiful. If there's anything that stands up to the series pedigree in Visions of Mana, it's that.
The characters are so wonderful, and yes, indeed, the same character designer between the remakes and Visions, they're the same person, and but these designs have the same spirit. They have the spirit of Mana of this earlier sort of entries, right? Like they feel like they fit like a glove, and that's just so cool. Everybody is just so elegant, and like they really continue the legacy of the series, honestly, because it's a series known for its character art.
Yeah, this is one aspect of the game that is perfectly spot on. Do you want to talk about some of the nuts and bolts real quick? Because I noticed there was a quality mode and performance mode in Visions of Mana, but they both run at 60.
Really?
So
okay.
I don't really know what was going on there. I guess you didn't really change it. Yeah, if you turn to the quality at 60, maybe it's just a higher resolution, and then the frame rate is going to be whatever it is because it's 4K or whatever. I mean, it still mostly ran at 60. I guess there was like a few more hitches. I noticed when I turned down to performance, it was a flat 60. So maybe, I guess that's the only difference.
I kind of just left it on performance, so I never really bothered, but I suppose I should have like switched it.
When you take a peek next time, or you turn back on the game, it's still 60. It's weird. I don't know.
But you know, it's not 60. Some of them cutscenes, they're 30 still, and that's like pretty jarring, quite honestly, because these cutscenes more or less are designed with the actual in-game models. So like, it doesn't really seem like enough is happening in the cutscenes to justify the 30. Like, presumably, it's just the way they built them for, like, all of the platforms, I guess. But, I mean, it's just kind of weird.
That's the PS4, baby. That's the thing we're being held back on. Notice how long those load times were. That wasn't Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that's for sure. So, like, I mean...
Was it even 16?
Yeah, no, dude, this is a PS4 game. I mean, that's all there is to it.
That was filling. I should have. I didn't even bother like looking at the PS4 version, so I would imagine those load times were longer. But this was a fill-in bar on PS5. You get to see that little rabbi jump.
Yeah, it's probably not. I don't know. Doesn't look good enough to be warranting all that. You're telling me like I can load Gungaga in a snap? And, like, this game has to load, like, please. I understand. It's not the same budget, but, you know,
yeah,
whatever.
Not the same budget. And multi-SKU life, everybody.
Yep. Let's talk about, like, towns and dungeons, like, locations, basically, and exploring them real quick, if you don't mind. Because besides the intro, when we get to the gameplay and you're finally unleashed... Here's the first thing that impressed me about Visions of Mana. So when you get going on your journey, you're going up that little path, right, to going, like, leading away from your village.
Oh, so good.
It's just a single path with, like, some trees on either side, right? So, like, typically trees and foliage like that aren't meant for the character to walk around in. It's almost always fluff. It's just like, here is your path, motherfucker. And that's that's all you get. So I was like, okay, how much freedom is this game going to let me have? So I tried jumping on the trees and the foliage. It actually let me go out there.
You go through it.
And I was surprised because I was like, okay, they're really letting me do that. That's promising. And then you get to the next area, the first big area, like the rocky volcano place. There's again a path, but then there's also a lot of rocks that you can jump on and double jump on. And so I started doing that. And I was like, whoa. And then I looked off the cliff and there was an entire beach. And I was like, there's no way they're going to let me go down there, right? Like they'll just stop me or I'm just going to die or fall to my death. And it's like, fuck it. I'll try. They did not stop me. I'm on the goddamn beach. There's treasure chests and enemies and everything down there. Like the amount of freedom this game lets you have as far as movement and just looking around at stuff is incredible. I know this sounds pretty pedestrian to anyone who probably is not familiar with the series or the Trials of Mana remake, but then this was a shocker to me. I really didn't expect this amount of freedom.
I didn't expect it either, particularly for a series kind of typically on rails most of the time, but like these semi-open areas, they were really like fantastic. I definitely explored these for like treasure chests and jumped around. In Trials Remake, I really only got to jump around on like certain rooftops or like whatever, right? But in the areas themselves, like sure, there's some places where you can like jump on the platforms, but this really truly does the whole bit, and like there's just so much to look at in the distance. That's like the big thing to me. Like things stretch, baby.
Oh yeah, you're seeing stuff. You're seeing stuff. I love the movement options. I already mentioned the double jump, but there's an air dash. Is it weird that you can just not only air dash, but sort of infinitely air dash, like Dynasty Warriors Strike Force or something that only you and I remember? By the way, this is a compliment. By the way, I love that you can do that.
I mean, I totally did it to try to like cheese certain traversal sections, but I just like I'm like, can I make it if I just air dash infinitely? Occasionally I made it, more often than not I didn't, but it's useful.
Yeah. Well, they get less, you kind of drop like a stone after like 3 of them, but you can still keep air dashing. You can still do it.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk some locations. You want to talk towns first, though? Because towns were pretty fucking cool in this game, if you ask me.
Each and every single town was a welcome surprise. I mean, like, I really was looking forward to each and every single one. And quite honestly, they're all extremely distinct. I mean, for the most part, towns kind of exist as a formality in Mana. There's some towns that stand out from others, especially those in Trials of Mana. But I definitely can safely say that each and every single one in this game was visually and like thematically distinct. That's like crazy to get down, like especially with how many there are. Early on, there's where the Alm of Wind is from. That place is like windmills and like just the sense of scale, the mountains and the airiness. It's wild, man. It really makes Mana come to life, and I did not expect that from the towns. Even early on, that's what we were chatting about, like pretty much right away. You brought up the towns. I'm like, yeah, those are pretty good.
With the streamers and the windmills and stuff like that. It looks really cool. My favorite was definitely the town with the water elevator. Like you go up the thing and then you're in the is that where Palomina's from? I forget.
Yeah.
But that was like a Dragon Quest town. That was like a Dragon Quest castle town place. That you'd see in like 11 or something like that. Like that shit was so cool.
You want to talk rooftops? That place had some wild spirals and whatnot. It really leaned into the whole bit. There was like an Undyne statue just chilling. I'm like, yo, man.
Undyne. I have to remember. I never know how to say it as a kid. I was like, Undini? I don't know.
It might be Undine. Oops.
I don't know. No, I don't know. I'm not even trying to call you out. I literally don't know. I feel like each game wings it, but
I think they do actually.
I don't know. No, the towns are incredible. That one first port town you get to with all the trees that are like kind of pink and blue or whatever. It's very surreal looking, but it's also awesome. It's great. Every single town is visually excellent. Shit, I even love that small town that's up against the cliffs, Dead A Cliffs, where it's just like just almost like a few huts, and it's like a simple town, right? Like mostly tents and stuff, but it's great.
But it really creates the feeling of people living there. There's like so many animal folk, them a lot of tales out there, and they all just having a good old time out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of, how do I even say it? There's like quote unquote regular humans, right? Then there's like dragon people where they have like a couple of dragon wings. There's people that are considered tailed. So they have like a squirrel tail or a fox tail, right? And then there's beastmen, but then there's also like cat people, which are they also beastmen? I don't know.
I think technically yes by this game's lore, but yeah, it's just the fact that it was there. It's like, and these they all inhabit these areas, so it's just super cool seeing everyone just in these places.
Yeah. If I could talk about any location not in depth, again, I don't want to spoil too much, but can we please just come together on Milo's Woods real quick and the Mana Tree? Because I think it's the best manifestation I've ever seen of the Mana Tree, as I talked about before, but also just everything. It really looks like you're walking through that art. Everyone's seen it, right? It really, the foliage, the way, even just those leaves that look like a fan almost, with like the little, I don't know what kind of plant that is, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Those are there. Yeah. The little curly flora and fauna, like everything you've seen in those art books and those art pieces, this is it, came to life. It's legit one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. Going back to Dragon Quest XI, if anyone's played that, remember Yggdrasil, when you get to actually go there, this is like that, but even better. That's how cool Milo's Woods is, and of course the Mana Tree itself.
And that was also, Yggdrasil had plenty of spectacle, but yeah, just the amount of stuff to look at in this game, I never in 1,000 years would have expected Mana to look like this.
It's incredible. I don't even know what else to say without, again, I'll just leave it there. But, okay. Yeah. See, this is the kind of stuff where I actually do want to do a PS4 comparison, because there's just no way. I don't believe it. There's no way that amount of foliage.
I think there's too much geometry for it to run as well on PS4. I'm sure it's scaled back. Maybe we need our homies at Digital Foundry or Annalisa de Bits to help us out.
El Annalisa de Bits, maybe. Digital Foundry, I doubt it. They barely let John do East 10. They probably just let him do it because there was nothing else on the schedule. I mean, I doubt they're going to let him do Visions of Mana.
Penny's Big Breakaway, I guess, man. Whatever floats your boat.
Penny's Big Breakaway has 10 times more the panache in this than seeing a PS4 version. Look, I'm sorry, it's true. Before we move on from this, some people have said that Visions of Mana takes cues from Xenoblade because of like the wide open areas, but I'd argue that it feels more like the recent Ys games, like 8 and 9, and probably 10, which I haven't played yet as of this recording. Like, Xenoblade zones are fucking huge and expansive. I would never describe Visions of Mana that way. I think Ys is a much better comp.
I agree. I would definitely say that Visions of Mana is not an open world game, though these areas are quite sizable. Maybe perhaps like it's a weird sort of thing to bring up, but perhaps like even Borderlands 2, maybe like kind of expansive in that sort of sense, but they're still constrained though.
That's actually not a terrible comp. I think something like Borderlands 2. I think Borderlands 3 is probably like too much. Those are probably too big for what we're talking about. It's a little
too big comparatively, yeah.
No, that's actually not a bad comp. I'm not going to say much about the dungeons because I don't want to spoil, but I just want to say that nearly every single one in Visions of Mana is cool as fuck. There's unique visuals to each one. There's unique gimmicks to each one. They really worked on these. Again, I don't want to say what they are, but I think you can agree.
I agree, particularly because the mechanics were striking and varied each and every single time. Because, I mean, really, honestly, as much as we love Trials of Mana, the dungeons don't really have the most mechanics in the world. Like, occasionally you'll get a switch, and like every so often you'll get to like talk to something and maybe use an elemental, but really ultimately like those elementals are on full display here. And of course we won't say how, but like I love that stuff, man. I eat that up with a spoon. It's just so cool.
Yeah, the dungeons are incredible in this game. Probably I think there's got to be the best in series history. I don't think there's one's better than this.
It's not close.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk characters. Let's talk voice acting. Let's talk characterization in general, if you don't mind. We'll just start with the basics. Like, what did you think of our adventurers or our cast of characters this time?
I really thoroughly enjoyed like how they bicker and converse with each other. Like they really have a lot of personality, which is just like night and day with like Secret of Mana, which are basically just all but archetypes at that point. But these are way more than just archetypes. They feel like actual like characters that develop over the course of the story. And as mentioned before, like they're all of like different sort of races or and they really they all feel visually distinct. That's like the big thing too. It's just so cool.
My favorite is definitely Morley, who I affectionately call Catman.
That's his name, he's a Catman.
Catman. He's great. What accent was that he was putting on? I don't know what that was. It was trying to be like weird. It was trying to be like mid-century United States continental accent or whatever that you might hear in a noir movie or something. But it was also like, yeah, but it also felt a little like there was a slight European bent to it. I don't know what that was.
I was going to go with like Romanian castle lord or something. But
yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. Like Eastern European kind of like type of shit, right?
Yeah, one step removed from being like a gothic vampire, though he's obviously not that. But
no, I like their dialogue with each other. This is something. This is again by far the best writing in any Mana game for sure. I think. I mean, it just. Yeah, like, look, I like the characters in Trials, but like the beat for beat dialogue, maybe not the most interesting, but that's okay because you get enough of it. Here, they're talking, baby. Like we're, you know, yeah, we get a lot. So, and I like to hear them. They're well acted for the most part. I think it's kind of haves and have-nots. I'm sorry, I couldn't stand Karina's bizarre Southern accent. I'm not sure why they went there with that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I actually didn't mind it. I thought like I actually kind of liked it to a degree, but yeah, I was like not really sure why they went that direction.
I really liked Hina's narrator moments. Like as you go around the world and get to new places or whatever, she's like sort of narrating the story because you're mostly seeing it those moments through her eyes because you know she's the Alm of what? Where are they from? Earth?
She's Fire? The Alm of Fire.
So like, you know, yeah, she's Alm of Fire. So she's kind of like you're reading her diary almost. I like that thing in a JRPG, I think. That's kind of something that always works on me.
So I have to crack a really silly joke in that I really, really love these monologues, as it were. There's another mana game that I thought of regarding monologues, and that's a Sword of Mana, and those monologues are pretty, oh god, they drag. It's like, I just want to get back to the game, but I actually wanted to like listen to these particular ones, but those Sword of Mana monologues, oh god, man, they drag.
Yeah.
About the most like banal stuff too.
It's a lot. It's too much.
It's way
but
too
yeah,
much.
this game, I mostly wanted to hear what they had to say while walking around. They had a lot of quippy dialogue or whatever. I wanted to hear that stuff. So long as they weren't telling me how to play the game. Hey, maybe we should check our equipment. Like I've had enough of that shit. Or when I was doing some grinding at the end of the game, they kept telling me, "Oh, you have a lot of money. You should go spend it."
Ah, that's right.
And it's like, dog, I know. It's like, shut up. You don't have to tell me like I get it.
I could use some new weapons and gear or something like that. It's like, what are you talking? It's like I'm at the end of the game.
I think Palomina kept saying, we are flush with funds or something like that.
Yeah,
we should go. It's like,
that,
okay, shut up.
We have a lot of lucre. Time to spend it. It's like, I know. Trust me, I know. And speaking of Borderlands, it's like that one thing at the end of the first game where they're like, shops have new inventory, like during the last boss fight. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's like, okay. Oh, yeah. We saw that as the last boss was dying, it said shops have new inventory. It's like, bitch, we're about to see the credits. Like, I don't think we care right now. Yes, I can definitely go buy some new shit right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn around and just take care of that real quick.
It's like, bye.
One thing real quick. I really thoroughly was impressed just by the fact that having just replayed Secret of Mana 2018, that game's voice delivery is so flat. So it's wild.
It's not the worst. It's not terrible. It's just not great. Like, Trials isn't that good either, but at least that has like some kitschy fun to it. I think
so
with like
fun. It's
with like some of the voices the way they are. I think it's like kind of fun. Secret of Mana 2018 is very flat. This is the best of both worlds in Visions. I think they're
I agree. Yeah. Well, we still say come again
from Trials. Yeah,
our favorite.
Come again. Yeah, it's so good.
They don't quite do that here, but they actually have like all sorts of shopkeepers. So that's pretty.
Well, they have the dancing shopkeepers. They do keep a lot of mana stuff like that, and I'm very grateful for that they do try to keep that flavor as much as possible, doing something new. There's a couple of character moments I want to mention real quick, and again, I'm not going to say anything too crazy or spoilery here, so don't worry. The two I want to highlight is from Hina. There's a lot of stuff, whether it's in her diaries that we were, voiceovers that we mentioned, or just saying stuff to characters like, I wish we could do this forever, or we still have to cherish this while we still can. She has a lot of lines like that she says so many things like that I figured they might try to avert their fate eventually, just like we saw in the intro. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, guys, you have the chance to do something here that's really, really cool. Are you going to do it? And I think they do. Again, I'm not going to say anything more than that before we get behind the spoiler wall, but Ven, do you agree? Like, I think they actually did something cool.
It really makes you empathize with her situation, particularly as she like really wants to like journey the world. We all want to journey the world, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, like, it's a relatable sort of thing for her to say, like, I wish you could do this forever. But given the setup, which we mentioned, like, it makes you kind of wonder what's going to happen. And that sort of intrigue is so cool.
I did not expect what happened. I'll put it that way. That's all I'll say before we get there.
I don't think I got a good read on any of this game.
Yeah, I did not expect that. You want to tell me about a character moment you liked? I have one more, but you say one.
Yeah, without getting too much into the weeds, I really enjoyed Morley's character development early on when you meet him. He's pretty standoffish. I mean, that sort of standoffish behavior doesn't really linger for too long, but the dude has a lot of previous regrets and emotional baggage, right? And that's kind of like his defining thing at the beginning. But pretty quickly you see his heart thaw throughout the course of the journey. He sees like his former like mentor who taught him like swordsmanship like pretty quick, and then that NPC is like cracks references to how he's changed, and I'm like, oh, that's actually really neat. That's super cool.
That is cool. That NPC which I will not name, I will just say that they are a staple in Mana games. I don't think I ever expected him to look like this in this game. I think it's great, you know, but yeah, I did not expect that. It's fantastic. I won't say who it is though. There's one other thing I want to highlight. I think my favorite overall like conversation in the game is when you get to that hippie town, Sata. Everyone's free to do what they want, and what's mine is yours, and vice versa. That bullshit. And so there's a beast man named Glyph who questions the hell out of what Val is doing, because it's obvious Glyph thinks this whole cycle of sacrifice is bullshit, but Val's response is really key, because typically what happens in games like this is that the character's worldview is questioned, and then they get all mopey about it. Oh, maybe are we doing the right thing? Blah, 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 you know, and that's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
But
it is.
What happens here is that Val is like, yeah, there's a lot of things about this world I don't know about, but I won't find the answers unless I continue doing what I'm doing, being a soul guard. That's the only way I'm going to discover what this is. I'll find out what's going on along the way. And I thought that was great. This was an actual substantive character moment, you know? And again, folks, we're talking about a Mana game here. Like, you know, Jesus Christ. Like, I never thought I'd get this from that. So I just thought that was very notable.
Yeah, I definitely think it was notable as well. And honestly, like, Val is such a good-natured person, so for him to actually, like, take these things into consideration, it's pretty impressive. Because most protagonists would totally just be like, nah, like, I gotta do my thing. But he actually expressed some degree of like thought about it, which was pretty interesting. Especially actually seeing an NPC question like the whole thing like this. I mean, most people in previous games wouldn't really care that much. You'd feel like, get them elementals, whatever. Get your spirits, get your mana seeds, whatever, fine, right?
Yeah, mana sword, okay, whatever, sure, yeah.
Fine, that'll work. Yeah, put all the elementals into like one spot. Yeah, just do that. It'll work out, right? But
you're getting kicked out of your village for no reason for stuff that isn't your fault. Okay, whatever. You know?
Yeah, it's just everything is so tied together in this game. It's pretty neat.
All right, Vin. We talked about all the good stuff, but now it's time to talk about all the bad stuff. Break first, though.
You're coasting with Fine Time.
Okay, we're back. We're in Badland. We're no longer in Milos Woods and the good places. We are now in the bad place.
By the graces of the goddess of Mana, I name you the Alm of Pepperoni.
What? I thought you were gonna say like the Alm of assholery or the Alm of contentiousness or something, because we're going to be criticized.
The element known as contentiousness.
Okay. I'm sorry. The element known as pepperoni. That was better. Okay, cool. Yes, you got me. Okay, God, I'm the one being silly.
Okay. Oh, you want to talk getting silly? We're gonna get super silly because we're gonna dive into some shenanigans in this game's mechanics.
Oh, we will. But okay, let me start here. So what I'm about to mention has also been a problem in other RPGs, but those games overcome it in other ways. I don't think Visions of Mana does overcome it, and it's that all the RPG stuff kind of sucks. I think. Like I'm talking like equipment, like armor and weapons and like accessories and stuff like that, like stuff you equip. None of that stuff is very exciting or very good or feels very good to equip, because this is a fairly low damage game and like enemies have high HP, and it doesn't matter what you equip. It never really feels like you're getting any stronger. It doesn't feel like you take them out faster. There's seeds that you can equip, such as like, do 10% more damage to this, or have resistance to this ailment or whatever. But it's like, none of that stuff feels great, right?
Dude, it's so deflating.
That's the overview I want to present to you before we get into the weeds a little bit here. Do you agree or disagree?
I totally agree, because the equipment isn't particularly exciting. The game has so many options. There's an overabundance of decisions that you can make, but none of them really add up to anything or really affect the game now, do they? Because, I mean, look, each character can equip one of 3 weapons, which is interesting on paper, but it doesn't really matter which you equip. It's like, yeah, sure, Val's a great sword, and he also has, like, a long sword, but, like, in all honesty, no matter what you pick, it doesn't really matter. It really ultimately doesn't. And regarding these ability seeds, that system drove me nuts. Like, you barely have any ability seed like slots at the beginning of the game, and it's like, do I really want to use one of my 2 slots to like equip some random thing? And it's like, this is like a percent bonus. It feels bad, man. And like, well, there's one particular instance I want to mention. I just opened a chest and I got some like saber casting elemental saber spell out of a chest just completely randomly. And I'm like, okay, this is a thing that I can choose to do all of a sudden. It's just like, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, the fact that like those ability seeds can also be like spells is also not very exciting. Like on the surface, that should seem okay, right? But that's another big problem with this game, and I feel like it's prudent to mention it now. Magic kind of sucks in Visions of Mana, and that's a big problem. I think anyone who's played Secret of Mana or Trials of Mana knows that how that stuff works. The ring system, fireball, moon saber, whatever. Like those things are very, very powerful, especially in Secret of Mana, since the more you use them, the more they level up. I think it doesn't work that way in Trials, right? I don't remember.
No, it doesn't. It sure really doesn't.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, but everyone knows that system, right? We've all grinded out spells and such. I'm not saying that Visions should have the exact same system. I'm just saying that Magic being good and a very good tool to use throughout the game should be a part of Mana, and Visions simply doesn't have that.
It doesn't matter, because really, honestly, most of the time you could just have physical attackers whomp on somebody and score the same effect. I mean, just for variety's sake, I did throw in the magic attack magic user Palamena just to shake things up, and I equipped a bunch of seeds, and I kind of like worked my ass off to like do this very specific setup. And yeah, sure, I did like exploit some elemental weaknesses, but in general speaking, a lot of the spells just kind of don't have that impact, especially all the like the non-elemental stuff or like the lower leveled like elemental stuff. It just kind of exists, man. And it's like, there's so much of it, though. There's so much of it, and none of it really does anything.
If you get deep in the elemental plots, more on that in a second, you can find some pretty powerful spells, but they also take hella HP and the cast time or whatever. So I still don't actually think they're worth doing, in my opinion.
It's so much, and Secret of Mana is just so known for its crazy powerful magic. Everybody jokes about chain casting, like just stun locking someone with spells, and of course that stuff is kind of too busted. But even in like Trials of Mana, like magic in general, like feels better than this. And
Trials of Mana, I love the magic in that game. I think it's really good.
Yeah,
it has a really good balance, because that game's a bit more mashy in terms of like using your weapon. So yeah, maybe like spells aren't as important as Secret of Mana, but they're still important. They're still really important, and you can't really get by without them.
Yeah, they ultimately affect the game in meaningful ways, which is not the case here.
So I guess in general, I feel like action RPGs like this really rely on like a very basic system that's as basic as the gameplay itself. Like you get new sword, you are much more powerful, you get new armor, you take much less damage. I think that like very almost kind of boring lock, stock, and barrel RPG stuff is important to games like this, and this game just doesn't have that. So I don't know. I just think it's bad when your equipment doesn't feel like it matters. So I guess that's all I can.
Yeah, I guess to some degree the weapons have cool models, and that's about it. They look cool, and that's not much else.
That's about it. They don't feel very powerful to use. You want to talk about the elemental plot real quick? Because again, we're trying not to get too far in the weeds on the RPG stuff here, because I just don't think it's that interesting to talk about, because it doesn't do anything cool, right? If it did, I would want to talk about it. But can you summarize for the people?
The elemental plot is basically the new class system. You sort of like tap into the power of an elemental to become a new class, right? So of course, there are a bunch of elementals, so that leads to a bunch of different classes that each on paper have their own skills. But when you actually do assign an elemental to somebody, you go through this whole like Saint Seiya-esque transformation sequence. Is like super over the top.
It's so good. The music too makes it like it's really good.
It's so dramatic. You have all the dramatic chanting.
They're clearly pre-rendered out because they're 30 frames a second. They look like hella like just high spec videos or something. But it's
but I didn't mind. I didn't mind.
They're good, but the fact that like think about what you're saying. We're talking about like 8 elementals here for like the characters. So they have like 8 different fucking like outfits and 8 different paths for spells. That's a lot of stuff. And especially like we said, magic isn't very exciting in this game, and it just quite frankly sucks. It kind of undermines the entire thing, right? Because like none of the stuff you get from any of those things is very exciting. I guess to me, I think the best thing you get from any of those 8 things you can equip is like I forget what they're called, the R2 power. You can do some sort of super attack or some sort of specialized like attack, like put them in the bubble or set them on fire or something. Those are cool, but that's it.
Yeah, those do affect the game, but like again, like this class system is just like the rest of the game. It doesn't really necessarily feel the best, particularly because it takes so many resources to level them up. So you sort of feel compelled to like stick with one. If you try to diversify, it also doesn't let you access the passives of other classes. So like you can sort of mix and match spells, but like if you have all your points in another basket, it feels weird to change it. And it's very strange. And also like there are different attacks that you unlock via each class, but I never bothered using any of these, to be entirely honest, except for that R2 power.
Yeah, because that's the best one. That actually affects the game the most. The other ones aren't that exciting. You know,
yes,
once
I
again,
do a
so yeah,
it's slash. Okay,
I know, right? I appreciate the effort, but the stuff you can do with them isn't that good, so it just doesn't amount to much. I left Catman on Moon the whole time. I didn't really change him
for it.
Yeah, like why would I ever change him? And again, you don't really get enough ability points to like really explore all the trees the way you might want to. Yeah. Until you get to damn near the end of the game, and it's like, pretty okay, much. Well then what's the point then, right? Like who cares?
Yeah, and another nitpicky thing that bothered me from like most of the game was that, well, like these classes each class has to use a specific weapon, so I felt constrained by that too. So I was like, why in the world would I want to buy a brand new weapon for like a different class, right? It's like, I'm just going to stick with Val's Greatsword. Like, if I don't want to buy a new weapon for this. So it's like, it's awkward, right? It's like super weird, like trying to experiment because you don't get to do that.
Yeah, it's very awkward because like I noticed that too, because it's like, okay, there's this new shop I'm at and they have this new sword or whatever, but Val was on a class where he's using the lance, not the sword. So do I get the sword and then change my class again to like one that uses that? And then like, but then I'm on a different elemental and then I have to build that up. Do I have the ability points to do that? None of the systems work in concert with each other.
Yes, that's the best way of putting it.
And it's not the worst, but it's also just, again, awkward is the perfect word for it.
Oh yeah, it's just I wish it all sort of came together more compellingly, but I mean at least they look cool, I guess.
Let's talk battle system. Oh man, there's a lot to say and I don't know where to. Okay, you know what? Let me start here. Okay. Because we've been doing a fair amount of comparing to the Trials of Mana remake up to this point. Because that was the only game in 3D, a Mana game in 3D that wasn't ass. So like the battle system is like somewhere where we really have to directly compare, because we've talked before, especially in our Trials of Mana podcast from earlier this year. Thank you if you listened to that, by the way. We talked about how old Mana games can be a bit tricky with its very strange manner of turns. Even though it's not a turn-based game, it's a real-time game, but there's an internal logic to the way things stack. And once you get used to that, you have something that's really, really unique that honestly no other action RPG really has. Mm-hmm. You know, it's this very careful mix of whomping on enemies and while also watching your health like a hawk, and then like bringing up the ring menu, not just for a breather because it pauses the game, but also to use like, okay, should I use a chocolate to heal myself? Should I use a fireball to use this? Do I have the cast time for that? Blah, blah, blah. You're weighing all these decisions almost like a turn-based game, but it's real time. And that was the appealing part of Mana. The Trials of Mana remake is perhaps less quirky in some good ways, by the way, but it still retains that essential flavor that makes Mana Mana.
It does,
And simply put, Visions of Mana just doesn't have that. Sure, it's clearly based off the battle system from the Trials remake, but it's not as good for several reasons I guess we'll get into. But I'll stop talking for now. What do you think about what I just said? Do you agree, disagree, etc.?
I totally agree because, again, much akin to the RPG systems, it just sort of feels like stuff is happening. If you go into a typical battle, you see a bunch of, like, familiar faces all grouped up together, and they're just kind of standing around until you're there, but really, ultimately, it just goes down to mashing square. And occasionally you'll have to heal, but then eventually they go down. Like they're usually pretty spongy, and that's about it. Like you kind of rinse and repeat, and there's not much impact. And that's the biggest thing.
There's no impact, and it's like you said, you go up to them and jam on square and they're dead. I feel like they hardly try to attack you. I'm not saying they don't hit you, but it also doesn't feel very threatening. I feel like they're just waiting for you to show up, and they're waking up from a nap. They have this like animation where it's like, I guess it's time to fight now. And they're halfway dead by the time they decide to do anything about you, if they do anything at all. I think that's what we're illustrating. The first aspect of what's not good about the battle system in Visions of Mana is that the enemies just aren't exciting to fight. They don't do any cool attacks to you. You don't really do that many cool attacks to them. It's just swingy the sword, or whatever your weapon is, depending on the character you have, and that's it. It's so flat and basic.
Spongy life bar, go boom.
Spongy life bar, go boom. It sucks. It's such a big step backwards.
And talking about going backwards, the thing I noticed right away when I started this game, and right away from the tutorial, is that there's no charge combos, man. Like Dynasty Warrior style charge combos, like in which you do square, and then triangle for like a sort of heavy attack to clinch it off. And then you can press like in Trials Remake, you press like square like 3 times, and then press triangle for something else. And that kind of stuff adds a bit of an interesting variety to the combat, and they each do different, like completely different types of attacks, so there's, situationally relevant, but this game doesn't have anything like that. It's just, you literally just press square over and over again, and then you can choose to press triangle to do stuff, and if you unlock some stuff in your elemental plot, sometimes you can stack your square presses to do some stuff, maybe, but it's like, why would you take combos out? It's strange, man.
It's a baffling decision. It's absolutely baffling. Because, do you actually... Okay, I'll ask you, did you use that triangle button for anything? Because I don't even know what it's good for half the time.
I don't think I usually pressed it most of the time.
I think Catman, he warps around or something if he's on the move. Does it depend on your elemental? I really don't know. I guess it's weapon dependent.
It's weapon dependent, but I think you can hold it down in specific classes and not others, I think.
The fact that we're just we don't even know is a big failing on this game's battle system.
Trials Remake has you literally use the triangle button to break shields. It very definitively does that. It sets that up, and this game doesn't set anything up like that.
There's nothing cool. Nothing like that. It's just very mechanically boring. as hell.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that battles are completely boring. I mean, it looks pretty and you're hitting some dudes around and occasionally you do like a big attack. What do you think of that, by the way, before we get back to charge combos? Is that like, it sort of retains the super attack aspect of Trials of Mana, but now it's just like the bar fills to 100 and you do like one screen clearing thing. There's no real finesse to it anymore. I guess they look cool. They look really cool.
They look really, really cool, but here's the clincher. Like, I was impressed at first until I realized they actually copy and paste them depending on the weapon type. So, like, if you're a greatsword, all the greatsword screen clears are going to look the same. And it's like, once I realized that, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. It's just like, it's kind of, I mean, I guess maybe expecting 8 for each character is maybe a little much, but still, like, I don't know, man. They should have just been character dependent of just like Trials and whatever, go from there. But again, going back to charge combos, it's like you said, their utility. Like when you do charge 2 in Dynasty Warriors, that usually breaks an enemy's guard or pops them up or something. If you do charge 4, that's usually like a big sweep that knocks out a bunch of grunts or something. You do different things to cause different effects on the field, to crowd control, one-on-one battles, whatever, right?
Sure do.
Again, Visions of Mana doesn't have that, and Trials did. I hate to compare so directly. It's so hard not to. That game just came out 4 years ago and we just played something better. So like it's impossible for me not to compare.
They nailed the flow so well in Trials Remake. It feels so like freeform, but it like definitely impactful. And that was the one thing I wanted from this game, and it didn't really deliver it. So I'm just like, Matt, the fact that we're even mentioning just Mash Square, it's kind of a bit of a downer. Like that's something I'd assign to more like Children of Mana or something in retrospect.
Yeah, man. It's just that. It sucks. I mean, look, it's not as bad as Legend of Mana or something like it's not that stupid. Yeah, that's the worst. That's the worst mana battle system by far. Okay, it's not bad. God. Anyway, we can go on, but suffice it to say, battles are largely not as good as previous games, and that is a huge bummer. In fact, I would say, I'll correct myself, that would be the worst part of the game. But this is actually the worst part of the game. And that would be the bosses.
Oh, God.
Then I think this is the worst part of the game. Straight up. You know why? Because it's all the stuff that we just said about the battle system. Now apply it to a boss. Remember what we just said, folks, about you go up to a group of enemies, you press square until you win? Pretty much the same thing with bosses now. You just mash on them until you win. Those aren't bosses. Those are just big enemies. Terrible. They're bad. They're straight up bad.
They're not particularly exciting. And the biggest problem is that in the first, for so much of the game, they're just copy pasted from previous Mana games. It's like someone in a director board's like, hey, look at what we did in Secret of Mana and Trials of Mana and just bring them back on board. I'm like, there's no surprise to it. I think like when I was playing this, I seriously should have said, oh, it's that fucking guy again when I saw him in the distance. I'm just like,
yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. I was there.
It's like, come on, man. Like, Mana should be about surprises to a degree, but these bosses ain't it.
They are definitely not it. And it's like you said, there's a bunch of callbacks. Why is Mantis Ant here from Secret of Mana? Just because? It doesn't even make any sense. Why is he there?
No, I don't even know, man.
Why is Full Metal Hugger here? Why? Again, I'm sorry to do this again. Keep comparing to Trials of Mana from 4 years ago. Point is, the bosses were great because they added, okay, now we're in a 3D space. We're going to do all this MMO shit. Here's these zones where these rocks are going to fall. Here's these line attacks that you have to dodge. Better get out of the way. And they added other mechanics too. Here are these 3 totems and the circle is coming out from the inside. Once it reaches the line, you're going to get fucked up. Right. Hard. So you better take down those totems or whatever the mechanic is for the boss. You don't have to do any of that in Visions of Mana. There's nothing like that. Literally just womp on it till it dies. It's so boring. Those are not bosses. And the fact that they're bringing back bosses from Trials of Mana and bringing them back in a much, much shittier form, like, it's not just useless callbacks. they're bad. If you're going to bring them back, you have to do something spectacular with them. You have to do like some sort of spectacle. Okay, we just did these. Now we're going to do them better than we ever have before. But this is a PS4 game, so we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to have nice things. So
the models, and going back to the visuals, the models of returning bosses are actually really cool. But again, just mechanically, like there's not much of a threat. Occasionally, you'll have to like dodge out of the way of maybe like an AoE every so often. But it's like there's not much of a threat, right? There's not much of a impending sense of danger, and that just kind of sucks. And like it doesn't have to be like the super impactful like threatening game, but just the fact that like again we're just saying like just mash square, it's a bit of a downer. And as a bit of an aside, actually, so the Mana series social media actually posted the question, what is your favorite boss? And they showed a picture of the Kraken, and it instantly shared it, saying of course they shared the Kraken because even they knew what they had in terms of what the best boss was.
Yep. They totally knew. They can't go to any of those other ones because they're not cool. And that's the thing. I'm going to push back on you on that. I don't think they look cool. I think Full Metal Hugger looked way better than in Trials. I do. I don't think it looked. I think any of the, I'm not going to say any of the other ones right now, but I think they actually look better in Trials because they're bigger and they're more imposing.
That's what it is, though. Because these are more decorated, but they're less imposing. That's a great way of putting it, I think.
Yeah, and that's what a boss should be, and especially considering the original on SNES Full Metal Hugger took up the entire goddamn screen and then some.
Oh god, yeah, it did.
You have to make it that, and now it's just here's a crab. Okay, whatever, man. It sucks. That was embarrassing.
Here's a crab.
Here's a crab.
The crab formerly known as Full Metal Hugger, the coolest boss in Mana history. And here's a crab.
Full Mini Hugger, I guess, because, like, look at it now, man.
Womp, 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 womp.
Yeah. So we talked about the mechanics of the bosses not being nearly as good. Right. But I guess I can pull back on that just very, very slightly because there is a couple of bosses in Visions of Mana that do have good mechanics.
There's definitely one where it's tied to the arena. So you have to use something in the particular arena to inflict damage. And I thought that was a good like shakeout from the norm. There are other occasions where the game encourages you to use your elemental vessel to sort of like interact with the boss in a specific way. And I guess it's like a little different. Like you don't have to do that kind of stuff, but like the boss in question has like a tongue that you can interact with, and that's kind of cool.
Oh,
I guess
I remember that. Okay, I guess that's something, right?
But
that is something.
There's still not much of a threat though. They don't really do anything to like inflict that much damage on you. Like I when I replayed Trials Remake recently, our best friend Dolan, the moon furries we affectionately call him, he whooped my ass. I had game over to that guy, man. Like it was rough. Because I'm like, whoops, I didn't heal in time. But it's like, oh man, dude, like it's just not enough threats here.
Yeah, there was just the callbacks really annoyed me because again, they just weren't really okay. You know what? I'm gonna be honest here. I started taking bets with myself to see which boss would show up next. I fully expected to see Bill and Ben, and I did not see Bill and Ben. I actually did expect to see them. But when I saw some twin golem thing, I was like, I was like, oh, no, it's not them. God damn it.
Close enough. I would not have been surprised if they showed up, man. Like, at this point, they're bringing back all sorts of random guys. The emphasis on the random, by the way. It's just, oh, my God.
Yeah. Bosses are a huge disappointment in this game. Battle system and bosses. Guys, that's what you hang your hat on for an action RPG. And they're just not... for. Again, they're not terrible. Again, up front, I said I give this game a B-. It doesn't completely ruin the game. It's still an above average game, but man, just not what I wanted. Can we talk pacing real quick? because pacing real quick, LOL, Jesus Christ. Did I do a thing? What?
Pacing, well, like, that's kind of like one of my big nitpicks, too.
Okay, then take it from me.
The game spams way too many cutscenes. There are too many densely placed cutscenes. Even the same tab will sometimes have back-to-back cutscenes in the span of like a few minutes. So I'm like, it really drags everything down. Like, I just want to explore and fight, man, but I can't do that.
Yeah. Wasn't there a Sakurai YouTube music video? Wasn't there a Sakurai? I'm going to leave that in because it's stupid. Sakurai music video. Wow. What the hell is on my brain today? Wasn't there a Sakurai video recently where he talked about this? He's like, let the players play the game right away. Let them do something. He actually had a video about this. It's like, if you keep interrupting, if you don't let them do anything, they're going to get bored. That Visions of Mana didn't watch that video because I tell you what. Walk 3 steps, here's another scene. Walk 3 steps, here's another scene. And the problem is, it's a pacing. It's not that I don't want to see these scenes or that they're boring or that they're crappy. It's just that presenting them this way makes them suck.
Because you could have consolidated, or maybe some of them just could have been dialogue, but no, we have to do the whole fade to black and do another cutscene. It's like, oh god, I kind of dreaded that kind of stuff. I mean, look, what they say is fine enough, but it's just, I think it almost feels like somebody didn't really thoroughly play test this, because I mean, this pace is just broken up compared to like previous Mana games. Like, previous Mana games don't get interrupted this much. They really don't.
They really don't. The pacing is kind of wonky. I guess you had a big problem with the beginning of the game. Usually that's where I'm willing to cut the game some slack, right? And it wasn't, I'm not saying it wasn't annoying, but I'm like, okay, I'll give it some leash for this stuff. But you were really annoyed. You were much more annoyed than me.
Yeah, the first hour is just such a downer, man. It's just like, I don't think, I understand you need to have some sort of exposition and setup, but at the same time, it's just, this is just way too much. It's like, the 3-step thing is the most relevant, like, detracting factor. It's just like, I just don't feel like I get to really, like, go places as much because I gotta listen to these guys talk.
Yeah, it's enough sometimes. I think the game just doesn't have a good sense of when to let you play, you know, and they don't always nail that. But yeah, pacing kind of a problem. I wouldn't say necessarily a problem for the entire game, just in spots, you know.
There's definitely pockets where it's a bit more egregious than others. Yeah, and something that was slightly egregious to me, perhaps not as annoying, was just the way you acquire elementals, which generally is supposed to make you feel pretty badass, but in this game, they just kind of drop it on your lap. It's like, oh, you got this now. And I'm like, why?
Hey, by the way, here's this. Like, okay, I guess.
It just exists. It makes everything just exist, and it doesn't feel good.
I would have rather they done the Zelda thing where you go to 8 dungeons to get 8 elementals, because there is more than 8 dungeons in the game. I think they could have just done it that way.
Yeah,
I know that's kind of cliche, but honestly, I think I would have preferred that.
Particularly just because, like, when you actually acquire stuff, it's not very momentous. It just sort of, it feels happenstance, right? And that doesn't, compared to like previous games where it's like actually like acquiring elementals like an occasion, this just falls flat.
Let's talk music. I don't have a whole lot to say about it, which is probably why it's in the bad section of the podcast. So I guess I'll just start here. I was surprised to see Hiroki Kikuta's name in the opening credits. For those who don't know, he's a legendary composer behind Secret of Mana and Trials of Mana. So I was like, okay, maybe they got him to do a song or two just so they have the prestige of having his name. Who knows what he did to what extent, but I'll just flatly say it. Visions of Mana simply does not live up to series expectations as far as music goes.
It doesn't. And here's the funny thing. This series is known for its music. Like, Secret of Mana and Trials music is some of the best music in video games, period. But like, I suppose Hiroki Kikuta's like work might have been analogous to perhaps like Yuzo Koshiro's on like Streets of Rage 4, maybe. But here's the damning part. I have no idea which songs he worked on in this game. You couldn't even tell. That trademark percussion that's usually the dead giveaway, it wasn't here.
Oh no, we
I
don't
don't
get
know what
any
he
of
worked on.
we don't get any of that. Here's the thing: even when you're standing someone like Yuzo up to great composers in their own right, like Michiru Yamane, who does Castlevania's games, right? Yuzo pitched in on Portrait of Ruin, and you can tell when it's a Yuzo song, okay? Like, and that's no slight to Yamane. It's not that his songs are way better than hers or something. It's just that, like, they have a distinct thing. It's like, oh, that's them, right? I didn't confuse any of their tracks with each other. So the fact that we're listening to Visions and we're like, which ones are his? We don't even know. That's a problem.
How many times have you cracked jokes about Invitation of a Crazed Mood and Portrait of Ruin, right? It's so jamming.
It's fucking, there's nobody else who could even make that, right? So, and that's great. Visions of Mana does not have that with Kikuda's music to the extent that he worked on it, of which we don't know. But would you say it's even fair to compare to other Mana games? Like, are we being unfair by being like, oh, this isn't as good as this or that? Or do you think we're not taking it on its own accord? Or is it fair to compare?
I think it's fair to compare them, especially since the vast majority of the games in this series, they at least have the music. Maybe the mechanics are busted, but I would say even like Dawn of Mana like has some like memorable tracks. Like even Children of Mana, Heroes of Mana has some pretty decent tracks. So if those games could do it, why can't like this game do it? Like maybe assuming it would get up to the lofty standard of Secret of Mana and Trials of Mana is too much, but at least beat those middle games, at least beat those other like random side games out, right? But it can't even do that. It just
sure doesn't.
It can't do it.
I also think it's fair to compare to Trials of Mana or anything else because the Mana series has a high bar and Visions doesn't meet it. I feel like we should say so. The music in Final Fantasy 12 isn't that good, and everyone said so. Oh, God. Right? Like, Lord, I don't think it's bad. Okay, see, that's the thing. I don't think it's nearly as bad as other people think it is, even though I think that game sucks overall. But like, yeah, it's not as good. And you can tell it's okay. We can say it. Yeah, it's Mana is one of those series where it matters. If Mega Man music is just okay, we say so. Final Fantasy music, you say so. That's the standard for Mana, and it has to be met, and it was not. I feel like that's just about all the stuff we want to bitch about. So there's some really great stuff about this game, as you heard up front. There's some really not so great stuff about this game. But do you have anything else that you want to talk about before we conclude? Just any little tidbits? Because one thing I want to mention that I thought was annoying, that save points are hard to see most of the time.
Yeah,
like they're like this really, they're like this very transparent white column of light, and it's like I'm not really seeing it, because like usually if I'm running through an adventure field, LOL, and I haven't found a save point for a while, I usually backtrack because I know I missed something. I know I did.
You have a feeling of when one would have appeared, but here they're like sparkles, but when you actually interact with them, they turn into a tree, which is kind of a cute motif. But if they're just sparkles from a distance, it's like, and it's like it's nowhere near as like impactful as like a giant Mana Goddess statue, like chilling right there. When you see those Mana Goddess statues in like Child's Super Nintendo, like you're like pretty much offering up a prayer because you need those statues, man, because everything whoops you out.
Think about that. Oh, thank fuck. You know what I mean? I found a statue or I found no such luck here. Why were there random
I guess.
Why were there random packs of level 52 enemies just around?
I have no idea.
Did you ever? Well, I sure as hell didn't. Did you go back and even explore any of those areas? Because I didn't once I got up to level.
No, I never went back. Yeah,
because the loot in this game isn't very exciting. So it's like, I mean, I loved exploring around and looking for treasure chests, but like,
I like the act of finding chests more than the loot itself. I guess you get a lot of lucre sometimes, but the actual ability seeds, that's like, okay, sure, whatever. But that's not the only loot that sucks. The subquest loot sucks. It is so bad.
Terrible. Really bad.
It's like, here's some lucre. Oh, here's an ability seed that may or may not be relevant. I didn't even bother doing most of these because of it. I'm like, because you can see the rewards. It's like, why would I ever need that? That like sucks, bro.
You stopped real early. Yeah, I wasn't I wasn't with it. I stopped early too.
And you know another thing? So many of these quests devolve into like one of two categories. Either like talk to a specific NPC or defeat 5 of the same thing. So like there was a point in the game where it was like, oh, are they gonna have me kill 5 of some such? Yeah, you're gonna have to kill 5 of that thing. It's like, it's so dull. Like, I mean, geez, like these make Final Fantasy 16 subquests like look like Shakespeare or something, and that game's subquests are just like okay, but
you know what one of the best changes? I'm pretty sure this changed in Xenoblade Definitive Edition. I think the other versions of the game are not like this, but I think you get a lot of like fetch questy stuff like in those games, but when you complete them, they're done. So you go out in the field and you kill 5 whatever, it's done. It's turned in. You beat the quest. You don't have to go back to anybody and turn it in. It's over. When you collect 10 whatevers, it's done. You got it.
That makes too much sense.
And it's so great to do that. That's one thing they could have taken from Xenoblade but also in Xenoblade, the rewards are worth it. You get hella money, you get hella experience too for doing those quests. You don't get shit in this game. So yeah.
And speaking of Final Fantasy 16, they patched in the ability to fast travel to the quest like NPC. So you just turn it in lickety split because they have to do that presumably so that they can do their dialogue sequence or like whatever the heck, right? So sure, you have to warp over there. That makes sense in the context of that game. But this game, yeah, like I killed the 5 things. It's like, okay, it's like, sure, I guess. And I got my Lucra, like, thanks. I guess I'll buy a weapon that I definitely need. Sure.
Sure, I guess so. I think that's all I hated the fact that you couldn't air dash or double jump in town. Like, why are you why are you taking the movement options away from me? The fun stuff. Like, let me just do that. What reason would they have for taking that away?
There's none because there's stuff that you can find in town that's like up above on ledges, but you can't double jump, so you gotta take the long way around or whatever. And speaking of stuff that you can't do in towns, this blew me up. You can't change party members in town for some reason.
Oh yeah.
Like, you have to do it outside of town. I'm like, why? I don't know why. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. Another thing I don't know why that was set up that way is the fast travel system in general. Like, you are weirdly set up, you are weirdly confined by the area that you're in, so that if you want to go to specific areas, you gotta leapfrog. You can't just like pan out and like fast travel to like an area of a different region. You gotta do it one step at a time. It's like, why? That's like awkward.
It doesn't make any sense. It's really weird. I don't understand. I feel like the party in town thing must be an oversight. Because remember, I was thinking like maybe because you're in a quote unquote story moment that you can't do it or whatever. But I was like, no, it's just when you're in town in general. Which is insane because you're equipping stuff and you're like, how can you not set up whatever, man? Dumb. Again, though, conclusion, this game is a B-. I know that we've bitched a lot here, right? But despite everything we said, there's so much good stuff about this game. As you can tell, it's a game of heavy pros and cons. It's just a matter of how much those cons will bother you. And for me, they didn't drag it down enough to the point where I couldn't recommend it to everybody. And that's the important thing. If someone were to ask me if they should play Visions of Mana, I would just say yes. I don't have to say, yeah, but blah, blah, blah. No, yes, go ahead. Especially if you like mana games, yes, recommended. Now, do they want to pay $60 for it? I don't know. But I can recommend Visions of Mana without hesitation, and that's the first time I've been able to do that in 30 years. So
I'm going to start recommending Dawn of Mana to everyone out there when that remaster comes out on PS. I'm just kidding. But
if they remaster that fucking game before, oh my God, that would be the worst. Whatever. Anyway,
if you're looking at Visions of Mana and you're remotely curious about it, you're going to get some mileage out of it. You're going to find something to enjoy, whether it's the visual craftsmanship, or whether it's a sense of exploration, but just don't expect this to be a balanced or consistent experience whatsoever. But then again, like, sort of the mana paradigm is that so many mana games have a severe sort of inconsistent quality, like the mechanics and the balance of mechanics in like the audiovisual craftsmanship are out of whack in so many of these games. Really, Trials, Super Nintendo, and Remake, and Secret Super Nintendo, they get that balance like relatively right. But in so many of these other games, like, they're just not the most fun to play. But and unfortunately, Visions of Mana continues that sort of trend. But then again, despite the fact that I can't like transcend that, it's still a good time. It really is.
This is actually a good time. All the other shits from the 2000s, I could never recommend to anybody. Like, no way. And again, I haven't played Adventures of Mana, but look at it. Like, please. So
it looks like ass.
No,
I like it so much.
I would never in my life recommend anyone play a game that looks like that. I'm sorry. Like, no way. But yeah, that's Visions of Mana. If that's we can heartily recommend, maybe not heartily, that's a strong term. We can definitely recommend it. You'll just have to take the good with the bad, and I think the good is worth it. So here we are. We're at the spoiler wall. We're at the Dead A Cliffs spoiler wall. So we're about to climb it. So if that was all you wanted to hear and you don't want to hear spoilers for Visions of Mana, this is the end of the show for you. We'll catch you next time on Fine Time. However, if you want to hear us dig deeper into some story elements and other stuff about the game, we will do so after this break.
Fine Time, broadcasting worldwide.
Okay, we are in the spoiler. Well, I was going to say we are in the spoiler wall, but we can't be in the wall. We'd be dead. We are over the spoiler wall. How about that?
We're in the Sanctuary of Mana.
Okay, let's start with the biggest one, okay? I think Hina's death is actually really, really bold because it's essentially a bait and switch on the player. The game was sold on Val and Hina going on this journey. Here are your male and female protagonists. Oops, she's gone after 8 hours. She's dead. Okay. Games don't really do that. I think that's, just on the surface, I think that's pretty daring if you ask me.
It's extremely daring by any measure, but particularly by Mana series games, in the sense that like so many of these games like have the female protagonist turned into like the tree or like whatever, and that's at the end of the game. No, this happens in the middle. It's just a thing that happens. Like you were kept on your toes, like, is this going to happen to her as they go along with like this weirdly conceived plan? But she has all of these monologues leading up to this point, so it's like, man, it's so consistently delivered that she talks about the places they go to. Now she's gone. They don't do no more monologues.
Yeah, no more monologues. The rest, less than halfway through the game. That's crazy.
They're gone.
If
they
they
don't
did
get
that,
to do this forever.
Yeah, if they did that near the back of the game, okay, I might like understand it more. But like this was very shocking to me. And okay, here was my big brain theory. Here's what I thought was going to happen. Okay. I thought the fairy was going to be like a fake or whatever, and actually some vessel for some ancient big bad or whatever that's getting off on all these like souls that are going to the mana tree, but really it's like this evil whatever. I figured that was happening because all of this just felt so convenient to me. Oh, this is how the world works, and all the we need the souls of whatever. You give your soul. That's how they always said it. Give your soul to the mana tree.
Soul. Yeah.
So I just figured they would all get sacrificed. Val would find out it's an evil person doing it, and then he'd bring them back because anime reasons or whatever. But that's not really how it happened. So,
but the fact that you even came up with that potential theory, like that speaks to the sort of like narrative intrigue on its own, right? And so many Mana games follow the same paradigm. Heck, like Trials of Mana isn't really a game we remember for its plot as much as we love that game, right? So I mean, this had so many implications for the rest of the plot. It was just so cool.
I just couldn't believe it. I really couldn't.
Yeah.
While I generally enjoy the story in this game and the world of it, I had a real hard time reconciling a few things, particularly like people's attitudes towards this cycle of sacrifice that they just accept so willingly. Yeah. You know? So, and the big example for me is that after you beat the last Benevodon, I guess more on that later if we want to, the Benevodons are back, where you do that, you go talk to Hina's parents to tell her that she died. This makes almost no sense because the cult of the mana tree sacrifices means that they pretty much already accepted their daughter's fate. You know, her being dead. She's going to go to this tree and she's going to die. Why would they be upset now if she died along the way? Either way, you were never going to see her again. So what the hell's the difference? Why have this big dramatic scene of Val going to them and being all sorry that she couldn't protect her? So what? If she's dying, she's dying.
Yeah.
And also, her mother, Hina's mother, starts telling us like how she wanted to be with them forever, and you don't know what you miss until it's gone. And it's like, lady, this is your goddamn daughter you're talking about. Like, not your favorite book. Like, why were you so happy to see her off to the mana tree in the first place then? Did anybody think about this beforehand? The answer's no, I guess. Like, I guess
definitely no.
The answer is definitely no. I guess all I'm trying to say is this culture of death is really nonsensical sometimes, to the point where like scenes like this can have no impact because they don't make any logistical sense.
There's no logistical sense because you have to accept the inevitability of death, but certain characters, namely Val, apparently don't accept this inevitability, because when homeboy Oren does his thing, like, Val didn't think about the process thereof, right? So like that process has its own sort of like crazy like solution, and like he gets turned into a cornerstone and all his business or whatever, right? But he didn't think about any of the implications thereof, because chances are Val would have had the same breakdown even if they did complete their pilgrimage, right? Yeah. So it's like he has to come to terms with their death eventually. It just came sooner than he expected it. Right, and it's just like he evidently didn't think about it because he's so like gung ho about doing their duty and stuff. But
yeah,
that was weird, man.
That was really weird. I just didn't understand any of that. That part of the game had no gravitas to me, right? So, and okay, maybe this is just me being a moron, okay? And because I really didn't understand this. When Oren did the thing, he turns Hina into a core stone, right? So she's essentially dead. I didn't really understand what was going on. So like, does a core stone mean she is dead? Because they were kind of talking about, oh, I'm going to get her core stone and she didn't say like bring her back to life, but like, you know what I mean? Like, and then homeboy Delphos like absorbs her core stone later without any preamble. So it's like, okay, do you have to kill him to get her course down now? Or like, does any of this matter? And it turns out nothing of this matters, because later on in the game, you find out, oh, when someone turns to the core stone, they can't come back. That means they're passed on or whatever. And it's like, okay, now you tell me. But okay, I guess what I'm trying to say is the game made it sound like you could bring her back. Am I being stupid or not?
Well, you're not being stupid, because over and over again, their prime motivation is to get her core stone back. I don't know exactly what they're planning on doing with it, but they say over and over and over again, we got to get that stone back, which sort of creates the implication that you can bring somebody back to life, but they don't go out and say that, of course. But it's like, what are you gonna do? Lug this around until you like can fulfill your pilgrimage? It's like, oh, I'm gonna like offer this up. It's like, and just the whole crystallization thing was like this false sense of intrigue. It's like, why can he do this? I don't know, for most of the run, and then they just kind of like drop that randomly at the end of the game. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, boop, you can do. That's why you can do it. I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
It's like, okay, yeah. So, okay, I'm glad I'm not a total idiot, because I was thinking like, oh, they're going to, again, anime reasons. Oh, we can get her core stone and do the reverse ritual and bring her back to life ritual, or whatever. Yeah. Like, I don't fucking know, right? Like,
didn't say.
Yeah. So I was just confused.
Didn't say.
I was just confused. But Oren as a character, I think, is interesting.
He's relatable, right? And I think his motivations do make sense to a degree. I don't know exactly what he was planning on doing with the mana sword, but like he has this plan in his head. He's like, I'm gonna get it and change everyone's destiny. But literally everybody in every single mana game doesn't know how to use the goddamn thing.
Yeah, so nobody knows what they're doing. Oh, did you like, I don't know when else I'm going to say this, so I'm just going to say now. Did you like the hella convenient part where like homeboy villain has the mana sword, then he breaks it, right? And then Val just holds it up and then it just repairs itself magically. It's like, oh, it's good now. Oh, it just, now it's a mana sword. It's like, what the fuck, man? Like, what do you?
I mean, Trials of Mana's like end sequence does say like what the sword of mana in our hearts will never fade or whatever. So I'm like at that point, I'm like, okay, fine, what the fuck ever.
Whatever.
What the
man.
fuck is a mana sword?
They chose a weird part to do anime reasons, I guess. It was just weird.
So weird.
But yeah, I don't know. I really liked Orin as a character. I love that they started the game that way because I felt like that gave it the right tenor, right? So
yeah,
because I think otherwise it would be too much to accept that everyone else is just accepting this cycle of death, you know? So to start the game with people going against that, I think was pretty smart. Except
for the part where he's like the one guy that actually thought about this shit.
Yeah.
But it is good though, but
yeah.
It's just
so here's something that never really sat right with me. It was assumed that Etern, I can't say it like Morley. Etern was destroyed because they didn't send an alm to the mana tree. But after all the events there in Etern, where they saw Morley like broke the hourglass of time, or whatever it's called, I don't know, and everyone got trapped in a time paradox. How do we know that he broke it? Yes, he was climbing on it, but it looked kind of like it just exploded on its own. He's a little tyke at that point. Like, how could he just break this monstrosity? Of course, it turns out for that have not to have been the case. He didn't break it. Something else happened, which I don't want to get into because it's not important. Point is, not from the beginning. Did you ever think that he broke it? Because that never made any sense.
I never thought it made any sense. I mean, like, it moved coincidentally, but, like, he's so light. Like, how in the world would, like, such a momentous thing be affected by a tyke, right? That doesn't make any sense.
No.
And, like, if it's such an important artifact, why would it be so easily, like, destroyed? It's, like, very bizarrely told. And, like, that whole section of the game seemed a little, like, I definitely appreciate Morley as a character, but that part of his backstory, I was just like, I don't think it's you, dude.
It was just too goddamn convenient, you know? It was just like, I was like, I didn't buy it. And of course, like, large structures don't spontaneously explode when you climb on them, you know? Like, that's just not how life works.
But he spun the hourglass, and when you spin hourglasses, the sands of time will, like, change. And
excuse me, the hourglass of time, okay? I already said. That's his canonical name now.
Yeah, pretty much. Speaking of something that's a little too convenient, I actually kind of chuckle when Owl.
I like it, Owl.
I joked when Owl was named the Alm of Light, which kind of sort of felt extremely convenient. That whole build-up makes you guess. It's like, is it going to be someone in the theater, or is it going to be this whole ritual thing? It's like, nah, it's you. And I'm like, well, I was like thinking in retrospect, who the hell could have possibly be named this? And well, it's like, did it not have anyone else to, like, not anyone dressed fancily enough to be named that? It's like, okay, I guess, but
yeah, it's a weird one. Like, okay, I didn't necessarily see it coming, but I didn't mind it. Yeah, it's convenient. It's convenient as hell, but whatever. It made the game more interesting, so I'll take it.
It ultimately is fine, particularly because they lean into the whole angle of, like, well, he's a soul guard, but he's also the Alm of Light. He's both at the same time. It's so interesting. So, like, that aspect of it was kind of cool. Even if they sort of forced it, but I appreciate it, even if it was a bit convenient.
I guess I should say this before we get too far down the road away from Orin, is that I thought it was weird that Dalephos just kills Orin and also kills Liza. He does this big slash through both of them. Remember, Liza is a stone statue, but they both become core stones that Hal. Oh my God, you said Al and I said Hal. We cannot get this guy's name right. Hal Laboratory, Val Laboratory eventually collects their core stones, but it's like, that was weird. I don't know. Like, I didn't think she could, quote unquote, die as a stone statue.
Well, basically, that means somebody should have brought a gold needle from Final Fantasy and just like jabbed her with it.
Yeah, that's how it works. Why can't they use a phoenix down? Why you like when stupid people say that? Yeah, it's like, come on, please.
Why couldn't you revive Aerith with a phoenix down?
Yeah, shut up. But yeah, I thought that was strange, and it was very unceremonious. It's like, okay, I guess they're dead now. Whatever.
That whole buildup was very strange to me because the implication is that Orin chased him all the way to the Earth Village. Like, he tailed him the entire way somehow, and somehow thought he could put up a fight, despite presumably getting his ass whooped in like the woods. So I'm like, I don't know why he tried. It's kind of weird.
It was strange. I guess Delophos is an interesting enough villain. I would say he's more interesting than most mana villains who are just kind of nothing. Here is a Dark Knight. Ooh, right? Here is a weird wizard or something, like, whatever. I guess it doesn't matter. It doesn't ruin those games. You don't need good villains in mana games, but I guess this was a good one.
Most mana villains are forces of nature that just want to take mana for themselves and become a god, or like whatever, right? Or they want to take over. They want to bring the underworld back to life. Oh, yay! Some grandiose reason. The fallen hero angle is actually really fascinating to me because it creates this contrast. Like he was a really like baller dude in Legend, but the reality was a bit different. So that contrast is interesting. The only part that kind of got on me a little bit was that his motivation seemed a little too sudden, because like his beloved like eats it, and then all of a sudden he becomes like this super maniacal like guy that can somehow channel the powers of darkness for some reason, just because his beloved like
he cursed the land too. Remember, he cursed the land. That's why all these natural disasters have without the sacrifices, because Delophos cursed the land, whatever the fuck that means. So
yeah, he can make volcanoes erupt because he's pissed off about his beloved dying. It's like, that makes perfect sense, right?
I mean, I guess it's as good as an RPG villain reason as any, but yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I like the dude a lot. He's also hella pretty. I wasn't expecting that part.
Oh, he's beautiful. He is a beautiful man.
I saw a social media post concept art of him, and it's just like, ooh, his abs, ooh.
Ooh, abs. Is he more beautiful than Soma Cruz?
Fuck. Oh, come on, man. A little bit more than Soma, maybe.
Ooh, more than Soma. Wow.
It's too lofty, man. Why do you have to ask that?
I tried to think of the most beautiful man I could think of in my mind with the Soma. What can I say?
A little more than Soma. A little bit more.
Wow.
It's hard. I
think I would still say Soma.
You still say Soma? Soma is pretty, yeah.
Yeah, he's very beautiful. I really hated that the last dungeon of sorts was just like a rehash. Like, you just, here are all the places you've been to, but now it looks spoopy. God. And here are all the bosses you fought, but now it was Savage Mantis Ant, and
there's nothing savage about that guy.
Yeah, it's Savage whoever, and it's like, man, that just.
I think there was Savage Grapplevine. I'm like, there was nothing savage about him back then.
Nope.
Or in this game. There was nothing savage. The only thing savage about him was his attacks and Trials of Mana, not this one.
Nope. Not savage.
But I was sort of joking that they artificially prolonged this game because you're in the Mana Sanctuary, man, and all this stuff is just like showing up, so it just kind of sucks, right? And they didn't have to do it to this degree. Like, give us something more interesting to look at. Like, I know they're probably proud of their environments, but come on, man. Like,
I think they probably ran out of time or something. I don't know, man.
It's always what happens. But there is one ray of light among all of this, and seeing the past alms, i.e. the literal visions of mana, that stuff was pretty fascinating and cool.
Well, two things. One, do you like how in a turn, Val was like, oh, it must be one of those visions again? I was like, you know what he could have said?
One of those visions of mana.
This feels like a vision of mana. Yeah.
Could have.
Number two, I thought that was also cool. You see like other basic bitch ass NPCs like making their, pilgrimage up there. I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, I thought that was like you're hella costumed to fuck, right? Your party, and these just like basic like townsfolk. Right, so
you're dressed for the occasion, and they're just some schmuck that could have been plucked from town.
Yep.
So funny.
I guess I like the whole idea of like this land of, you know, whatever the world of Visions of Mana is all the other worlds of other Mana games like put into like kind of glommed into one thing, which I guess can explain why there's so many callback bosses if you really want to give them that much credit, but they still suck. That it doesn't matter if there's an excuse for it or not. They're still bad, but at least if you want to have a canonical reason for it, there's that.
They kind of imply that like some past game happened. They literally draw a contrast between two different eras of this world. That stuff is kind of cool. The fact that they're like, oh, these 5 realms were melded into one, and then like shenanigans happen. That's pretty dope. And like we've been joking that like Randy from Secret of Mana pretty much shows up as an NPC in this game. He's Coda now. He's the original guard.
It's like, Randy. It's fucking Randy.
It's like it looks exactly like Randy.
It's Randy.
I know. We know it's deliberate.
Of course. But it's Randy.
Yeah, but it's just so funny. And speaking of that whole ending sequence, like Coda's like egging Val to like try to like change destiny, but wait, there might be consequences. And so like Val does this whole mana sword thing, and it kind of cuts the credits, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. They didn't like literally show it, but it seems like the implication is that he severed the whole cycle of Alm's sacrifice. It seems like that's what happened.
Yeah. And you actually see the end of his life. Like he dies, right? And then
this is why I didn't expect that at all.
And then he becomes a spirit ghost, he becomes a new Randy, and he gets to be with Hina, who is the goddess of mana now. Of course she is.
So fucking convenient.
So fucking convenient. I mean, look, what else could you expect, right? Whatever. But
it's like, he's got stories to tell. It's like, oh, that's great, buddy.
I think the only other thing I really have to say is that I really didn't like the angle at the end of like, you know, everyone is forgiven in heaven, basically, kind of thing. Where it's like, because like Orin and Dalefos did some really fucked up shit. Okay,
they did,
and like the reward at the end of the day is okay. Both of you get to be with your hoes in heaven in the afterlife. Like, fuck that. Like, why do they get a happy ending?
His beloved literally says, I've been watching you this entire time. Have you been seeing how many people he's been killing, man? Like, you're just gonna like let him do, like, you're not reacting to anything he did. You're just gonna let him like do it. It's like, what? It's like unbelievable.
It's wild. I just cannot. That's fucked up. I was like, I don't want them to have happy endings. I didn't like that, but whatever.
Yeah, look, he can tactically go back to the trees of soul, but he ain't gotta meet his beloved again in the afterlife. He ain't gotta do all that business. Like,
he doesn't deserve it. Like,
he cursed the entire land. He cursed everybody.
He caused this cycle of sacrifice.
Yeah, he fucked up. The realms got fucked up. Yeah, so it's like weird, man. I don't.
And your reward is that you get to be with her. You don't get to be with anybody. You should go to hell. Like, whatever, man. I just. Bullshit. Anyway, I think that's about all the spoiler stuff I have to say. Did we skip over anything? I guess the fact that, I don't know, Benevodons are back, baby. I guess. I mean, that's about it. Other than that.
They have new designs, except the dark one actually does share a lot of design overlap with like the Trials one for some reason, but the other 7 are brand new. And I thought like some of them were kind of cool looking. Not obviously the fights weren't as cool as Trials of Mana, but
they're awful.
I like to look at those new Benevodons. The wood and the light ones particularly seem pretty neat, but like a lot of those designs are like they're fine. Okay.
I guess they were so not fun to play that I just don't care what they looked like, quite honestly. It's whatever.
Things to mash square on. I think it described which one was that? I think it described the water one as being like Vector the Crocodile's asshole cousin or something like that.
I don't remember what that looked like at all, straight up. Anyway, I remember the thing on the boat. I remember the gecko or whatever, frog. And
the frog, the Luna frog.
That's genuinely about it. I don't remember anything else. Anyway, that's about it. I think that's all the spoiler things that we have to say. Thank you so much if you stuck it out with us to the end of this podcast. We appreciate it. Check out Ven's Twitch channel or other social media, which we will link in the description of this podcast, plus the links to Find Time Podcast. I think we can get out of here. Do we have anything else to say, Ven of Mana?
By the graces of the goddess of mana, I declare this to be a fine time of mana.
That doesn't make any sense. Good night, everybody.
We'll catch you next time. This has been Fine Time.